Hey, welcome to the show. Today, I'm talking to Bart Davis, who is the co-founder and CEO of 512 Financial here in Austin, Texas. He's a newly minted CEO and entrepreneur. He's also a CPA. His company helps small to medium-sized businesses with outsourced accounting, financial, HR, recruiting, and more. We had a great conversation. I think you'll get some great takeaways. Enjoy. Well, Bart, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. First off, I want you in your own words to describe what you do.
Sure. So I run a fractional services firm. I think for a long time I would have said a fractional CFO firm, but we do a lot more than just that. So, we provide accountants, controllers, HR admins, HR executives, CFOs to our clients on a, fractional basis, which usually means 10 to 20 hours a week on any given client company.
Now, you left a pretty high-paying corporate gig and launched your own firm with a business partner. So take me back to that time when you knew it was time to move on. It was time to make that jump, which is, in an entrepreneur's journey, it can be exciting. It can be pure terror too. But tell us where were you at in that space at that time.
Yeah, there was definitely both excitement and terror.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I had a little bit of a cheat code or like an easy button, so to speak. We started the business. I had employees, I had clients through P180, my now co-founder's entity.
Okay.
And after we had exited the second of two portfolio companies that I had been supporting for 7 years, that was sort of the impetus to spin my little 4-person team into 512 Financial and sort of take it to market. So
okay.
There
was a bit of a client base.
There was a client base.
As I like to say, you had Scotch tape, you had staplers, you had payroll figured out.
That's yes, ish.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't completely
not a
sitting
blind,
at the kitchen table.
It was not a blind. Yeah, it wasn't in my garage going like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was. I went from an employee to an owner. I went from, I guess technically Joel's employees to my employees. I went, and I started hiring and trying to sell, which I had never done before, and that all of that was exciting. But then, as you go on and you look at your payroll and, I've had a few, you wake up in the middle of the night and go like, what did I do? What have I done here?
It's all those things they didn't tell you that you realize later and you learn. It's all that on-the-job training. So you're CPA by trade,
I am a CPA, yes.
Okay, you call yourself a reformed CPA.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
What part of the traditional CPA world needed reforming in your mind, I guess? It would be one way to ask it. And how does that shape what you do today?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a stereotype that I think is largely accurate about what a CPA is. Mm-hmm. I think people think of them as pretty rigid. I think people think of them as, you think CPA, you think taxes. And so I've had a lot of people over the years ask me if I can do their taxes. And although technically the answer is yes, nobody wants that. It would not go well for anyone, I don't think. But yeah, so I did audit. That was the reason for getting the CPA, was doing audit. I worked for PwC in Houston, but yeah, I mean, I think from my experience, and again, partially the stereotype, being a CPA is a lot about there's very defined processes and procedures, and here are the steps to get through an audit, file a tax return, whatever it might be, and it's very regimented, which I think fits the style of person that largely goes out and gets a CPA.
Okay.
And I think that is less so for someone who is selling or marketing or, trying to build and scale. Like those things, at least in my brain, like don't really jive. And so as I started doing those things, and it was so different from anything I had been doing previously, I was like, yeah, I mean, I am still a CPA, but I would kind of consider myself outside of the norm for what a CPA is and does.
Right. Yeah, I get it. There's a stereotype there. But I've seen a lot of CPAs that are very entrepreneurial and doing some amazing things.
Yeah. So. I'm certainly not a unicorn by any means, but yeah.
Okay.
That's why I use that term, reform.
So you spent over 12 years in doing accounting and finance within what, software companies? Do you call them software companies or SaaS?
Yeah, predominantly.
Basically. Yeah. What's one thing you would say that they still get wrong? Like a SaaS company, I'm talking about in the accounting and finance world, that they still get wrong.
I mean, I think, and this is probably not unique to SaaS only, but I think that there's a tendency to get fixated on a specific metric, and not one across the board, but like the soup du jour, whether it's growth, grow at all costs, whether it's, customer acquisition cost, whether it's retention. And like, these are all important things. But I think that if you over-index towards one, which I feel like I've seen happen a lot, and then subsequently thrash like, oh wait, that one's not that important. This one's super important. I'm going to full charge on that one.
Just get too myopic on one thing.
Exactly. I think that it's like, if it's something that it feels like is in your control or that you really understand, of course, that might lead to you, again, biasing towards that or doing, kind of controlling what you can in that regard. But yeah, I think you have to find a balance. To me, there's usually 5 to 7, metrics, KPIs, whatever you want to call them in any business that collectively paints a picture of health,
right?
Not any one or maybe 2. And I feel like pretty frequently, leaders in that space and probably many others, like pick one that I'm going to go be great at this and maybe ignore, to the company's detriment, some of the others.
Gotcha. So in these instances, if you're working with a SaaS company, like how do you support them on that front? What do you do to get them out of that mindset?
I think it's like a yes, but, like, wow, our retention's incredible. Yes, it is. But
look over here too. There's other stuff.
We haven't gotten a new logo in a while. Or, yes, but like for when we do get those, like it is really expensive. So yeah, like we get them and churn is low. So we keep them, but like they're not spending that much and we spend a buttload to get it or whatever,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess throughout your career, you've been in the room for some good M&A deals. You've been around some M&A deals, right?
I have.
Is there one that stands out? I mean, maybe not even mentioning names, but is there a deal you'll never forget that from your past life?
I don't think you forget any of them. And there's this saying that I think is very true that like every deal dies 3 deaths. But like, even if it eventually gets to the finish line. So yeah, there's a lot that stick out and I remember all of them. I think one of the kind of craziest ones was the only deal I did where we sold to a public company was in 2018, and everything had basically been going very smoothly from a diligence perspective, from a here's what the entities look like on the backside of the transaction, personnel, all those things were going great. But it came to light like at the 11th hour that the seller had a small, like very small Russian customer. And like that was for the space that the buyer was in, that was a massive no-no. Being between being publicly traded and in the space that they were in. And so, I mean, it was a 0.5% of the company's revenue, but like
it was there.
It was there and it was really close to blowing up the deal.
Wow.
That we had been, working on for months, if not years. And then it was just like, oh my God, is this the thing that's going to kill it?
Was there a values conflict or was there some?
It was a regulations conflict. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And how did you get through that?
I think, so that part I actually don't fully remember. I think that the plan was, this is a software business that we were selling. Yeah. And I think the plan was that they were going to, again, this is super small dollars, but they were
sunset that business.
Yeah, sunset that. Will just tell that customer like, sorry, you're going to have to find something else. Here's a pro rata refund or whatever. Take care of them. It's not like, because this was you pay for a perpetual license to these things at the time. It's kind of before full blown SaaS. Yep. So it was a hardware software combo. So I think that the answer was like, hey, you're going to have to go talk to so-and-so and here's your money back.
But it's those things that just kind of, you just don't expect. They just kind of
come in. It was so small. We just were like, we knew that we had, technically in the back of my brain somewhere, we knew that we had a customer in Russia who paid us a couple $100 or a couple thousand, whatever it was. Yeah. But it just was like, that doesn't matter. That's way too immaterial to matter,
So So you now are at the helm of a company that is supporting, would you say small to mid-sized businesses?
Yes.
So door number 3 actually is a client of yours. We're a growth marketing firm for scale-up challenger brands. So we're doing brand development, full funnel creative, paid media planning and buying, and we do not have the HR function in-house. So we do our HR through 512 Financial. What would you say is when people are thinking about outsourcing any of these things, any of these functions, because you may not have a CFO on staff or a head of people or head of HR. What's the line between smart leverage and then just like turning over the keys and having someone else handle it? How do you make that decision?
Yeah. I mean, it is tricky. And I posted about this recently because the barrier to entry in either the CFO side or the HR side is basically nothing. If you said tomorrow you wanted to start Prentice LLC, fractional CFO, like you could.
Yeah, that'd be a hit.
And if you had a friend or you had one time helped someone with something and they thought you were the bee's knees, and so you've got a referral and you've got a story and
a quote on my website that says,
that says Prentice is the best CFO I've ever worked with. Mm-hmm. then you could, and you walk the walk and you talk the talk, you could convince someone that like who actively doesn't want to manage their finances or their HR or whatever,
right,
that, they'd be in great hands with you. And again, like there's not like a specific certification. Like, I'm a CPA, but like I didn't have to have a CPA to start 512 Financial. Like anyone.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
And similarly, like,
but HR would think there's a lot more guardrails in place, are there not?
Yes and no. And I mean, and again, there are guardrails, but they aren't barriers. So like, yes, there are all types of certifications across accounting, finance, HR, but you do not need those things. And I think you can be good at the job without having them.
Yeah.
But so it's tough that, like, again, for our clients, and I imagine probably similar for door number 3, that they're coming to you because they know they don't know marketing, or in our case, they know they don't know accounting. So, there's some level of assumption, again, with some referrals and with some testimonials and that what you're doing.
Yeah. Are you here to say today that you don't know what you're doing?
We of course do, but there's a lot who don't.
Joking.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I wouldn't use me. No. There's a lot out there that
so there's
you
a lot
could
of
get burned really
a lot
easily.
of noise, a lot of people that will
really easily
put a black eye on the industry.
100%.
Really?
100%. Yes.
So do you have to do you find yourself having to overcome objections, or is it just
Yeah. And some of the time it's people who believe in the fractional model, but they got burned by a specific firm because they had high turnover or they had any number of things that might create a bad experience. But yeah, so anyway, I think there is a very fine line between the smart leverage and the just outsourcing it because you don't have the person or the function in-house.
Is there a certain size company, or how would you know that this is the right thing to do, to outsource versus hire?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so for us, we say our ICP is 2 to 20 million, and really there's a sweet spot in kind of the 5 to 15. And we're a bunch of former Big Four folks who have worked on much larger companies. We can and are willing to work on bigger companies, but valuing, sort of what you get from a CFO or an HR team or whatever, we think when you get to a certain point, it makes sense to bring that in-house and to have someone who they're 100% of their day is thinking about door number 3 or whatever company.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at your business and how the breakout of your business, tell me again, you got HR, you got accounting and finance. What's another big bucket that you're serving?
So we have a couple
those seem to be the biggest.
They are. And then we have 2 that are sort of they're separate, but under the buckets you referenced. So recruiting.
Oh, recruiting. Okay.
Yeah. It's part of HR, but it's separate enough that we would kind of call that its own sort of line of service.
Yeah.
And then similarly, transaction advisory, or you might hear it called financial due diligence, quality of earnings, anything around the M&A activity specifically. And so again, that falls under finance, but it is a kind of a differentiated
function. Mostly to support the transaction, but not to quarterback the transaction? Or is that part of it too?
Yeah, I would say that quarterbacking the transaction typically lives with an investment bank. And so ours would be more the investment bank, if there's an interested party, they want to validate, the result or see, hey, on the flip side of this, when we need to hire 5 more positions, or we don't need 2 CEOs, so we're going to let the founder go, whatever it might be, to kind of model out what does that look like on the other side, so that we know what we're getting into, not just the performance of the business for the last 12 months or a quarter or whatever, but what should it look like on the other side of the transaction.
Okay, good segue. So your company's called 512 Financial. By the way, anyone that doesn't live in Austin, 512 is our area code.
Thank you.
Just one of our area codes. We have a few area codes.
We've got several, but yes, we do. You know that folks don't live here when they call it 512 Financial.
Oh, 512.
That's how
I'm like, or 512 Financial.
Or 512.
That might catch on too.
We haven't gotten that one yet. But.
So a lot of executives still treat accounting, bookkeeping as kind of like looking in the rearview mirror. It's kind of the history. It's the past. You're reporting on the past. How do you flip it and use it as an actual growth weapon?
And I would agree generally that accounting is the rearview mirror, and then typically finance is the forward looking. But yeah, you can marry those things. And to me, it's about why. So it's really easy for us to, spit out the P&L and say, hey, Q1 was better than Q4. Yeah. Or, hey, we spent more in Q1 than Q4 or whatever. That's easy. But knowing, is that the new trend? Why did that happen? Is it because we hired people, and if we didn't fire them, obviously that increase in expense is still there? Is it because we did some new marketing thing that led to a bunch of leads and closed deals? Is it because, whatever? And so the bridge and the flipping of historical to predictive, I guess, is why and are we continuing those things?
Yeah. I had an accounting function before where it was just reporting on the past. So it's just facts, it's just numbers, and there was no, I guess you'd say, no narrative in the numbers.
Yeah.
And now getting to work with having a team that actually can find that narrative in the numbers, and make us not just more bulletproof, but just find the opportunities moving forward based on the past is powerful. And I know that's kind of like, finance 101, but I just think a lot of companies are really just looking in the rearview mirror.
100%. And I think, you'll hear the term in this, bookkeeping a lot. And to me, that like just doing the like, here's what happened, that's bookkeeping, right? You plug some stuff in from a bank statement or whatever, and you can see that, revenue's up or down or cash is up or down, but you don't know why and you don't know how to action it. And so, that's kind of, to me, the different step forward and kind of, in the maturity curve or whatever you want to call it.
Right. So now that you are the CEO and not just advising CEOs, what's been the biggest mind bender for you personally? It's a shift.
It's a huge shift. As I was kind of going, kind of moving along in the controller, CFO kind of world, like I always, although I had respect for all of them, I always thought like, I probably worked with 15, 18 CEOs, and like I was always like, man, these folks are crazy, like, and I maintain that to some extent, but now being in the seat and kind of understanding that like, decisions have to be made, and usually people in the business, particularly businesses of the size that we are working with, like want the CEO to be making those decisions, and that speed is really important. Like I would rather make the wrong decision quickly and then know how to fix it than just like wait a month to make the decision.
Yeah.
And so I think I've just gained an understanding of like why the typical CEO sort of is the way they are, while also still trying to put things through the lens of like, is that a crazy CEO thing to do, or is that just a thing you have to do in the seat?
Yeah. You never have all the information. You have to make decisions.
Rarely
with
you have all the information.
That's just the reality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if you wait for all the information, then it's too late. Usually.
Correct.
So that's a big one for you.
That's big. Yeah. And again, I think the finance accounting mindset is like, you close the books. You gather all of the stuff, and so so I think overcoming the need to make a decision without having everything, and then being like, oh, that's why, ABC CEO did that back then. Like I just thought like they were impetuous.
So crazy starts to make a little bit more sense.
Crazy starts to make a little bit more sense, and maybe I'm also a little crazy, as it turns out. It's been definitely an evolution.
Is there any self-reflection you've had to kind of go through in this seat now, needing to? We think about our disc profiles and just kind of how that works within a giant operation. Is there any shifting you've had to make, or growth, or things that you're focused on now that you're in this seat? I mean, we're all growing all the time.
Right.
Like,
I think it necessitates growth.
Yep.
And I reflect on, decision-making processes and who was involved and were they the right people, or, those types of things I certainly reflect on. I don't think my approach has changed a ton, but I do think my perspective has changed a good bit. And I hope for the better. I do. I try to think pretty often. Again, I put it through like, all right, like how, was that a crazy decision? Was that a informed decision? Was it a necessary? Regardless, like, you got to inaction is worse, again, in my opinion. So yeah, I think perspective more than approach has changed so far, but I am always kind of trying to evaluate like the way I'm doing it, more than just, obviously you always try to evaluate the results, but kind of how you get there also is really important.
So with AI starting to come into everything, but also it's coming into accounting and finance and automating things, and I'm sure it'd be interesting to hear how you're looking at that. But what's the real value of a finance leader now? Like what's that human edge? This episode of Listen Loudly is brought to you by Door Number 3, a growth marketing firm for challenger brands. Door Number 3 works with scale-up and enterprise-level brands who have a mandate to grow. We help them shift from accidental to intentional growth through performance media and brand development. If you need a growth strategy and execution partner, visit dm3austin.com or give us a call. We look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, so far, of course, to your point, it's bleeding into everything.
Yeah.
And what we do is not immune to that at all. So far, the two kind of really big plays in finance and accounting and AI have, at least that I'm familiar with, have fallen flat on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like we've now come across a handful of either customers or former customers, and I mean, it's not there yet, right? It's not even close.
The idea was there.
The idea was there, and lots of companies have the idea. There are others that are early stage, and I think maybe a little bit more transparent about the fact that like they're hopefully going to get there, but not there yet. But yeah, obviously it's coming. You could throw door number three's financials into your, secure GPT or whatever and ask it for analytics, and you'd get probably some useful things. But I do think you're still missing, the collaborative component, I think, is still super important. And I saw an example of this maybe last week that like someone was going back and forth with a client in email. There was some disagreement, and I think they probably used ChatGPT or something to craft like a really thoughtful email response. But because they were not having the conversation and sitting in a room or a Zoom room or a whatever and like talking through it, the message behind, again, a really well-intentioned, thoughtful message were completely misconstrued and thought of as kind of standoffish or whatever. And it like kind of ruined that relationship. Between it wasn't a 512 thing. It was, but it was, between a kind of a client service provider relationship. So I think that email is like a easy example with AI, right? Lots of people are using it to write emails right now. But I do think that the collaborative component, like you lose stuff, even if AI might have been able to in 5 seconds come up with something that I couldn't, or it would have taken me longer to. Having the conversation and leveraging each other's experiences, I think that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, the trust and the credibility and all that in this space is so critically important.
Yes.
And that's never going to go away. But like when you think about having your AI edge moving forward, what are the things you think about?
We partner with, are you familiar with Jeff Woods in town? So Jeff wrote a book called The AI-Driven Leader and has built what he's called a collective of, really smart individuals who are trying to leverage it the right way. And so he talks about it a lot, and the way that we're trying to implement it internally is leveraging it as a thought partner. It's not the thought leader, you're the thought leader. You know your business, all, but you can assign it a persona of someone just like you. Hey, you've owned a marketing agency of this size for 10 years and you've done these things, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions one at a time that, and can really help you either pull knowledge out of yourself that you just like hadn't quite figured out how to form it. And so we've been doing that a ton to fix internal processes, to, help drive client insights, but we're not like, it's not been productized for us at all yet. I think that at some point in time will happen, but for a starting point, we're just trying to get as many people in the company as possible as, adopters and familiar and understanding how to use it to make their jobs and lives easier so that we can do what we do well, better, and faster, as opposed to like, I think a lot of people right now are trying to leverage it to, reduce headcount or, and we're like, that's not, and again, sort of the kind of the whole thing in the collective is like, yes, that's a way to leverage it. But another way is to fuel growth by doing more with the people you have rather than trying to reduce the number of people you have and still do the maintain.
And I think as you're probably looking at it now, you're trying to figure out what are all the operational efficiencies we can have, right? To get people time back in their day so they can apply their own genius, to the best stuff and the most valuable stuff.
Yes.
But over time, that competitive edge needs to surface and then be visible to your clients, right?
Yes.
So how do you think about that shift going from operational efficiencies to actual competitive edge?
Yeah. So again, for the time being, we want folks to know, and we're vocal about it, and it's the reason that I'm in Jeff's collective and whatever, that like AI is an initiative that we're not just going like, oh, finance isn't there yet, so we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Not everyone, vast majority of the folks in the company are using it day to day. This is another little Jeff thing, like post it on your monitor, like what can AI do for me today?
Yeah.
And you flex that muscle enough, and then it does spill over into, client things. And again, at some point in time, probably something gets productized. But for now, it's just like, hey, like the way that we do what we do is, I'm spending 10 hours a week on door number 3. Well, like, if I can do more for you in that 10 hours, then, that's obviously the more value you get, the longer and more fruitful our relationship will be, and so on. So yeah, like I said, for now, it's just about, it's early enough in the game that, the cutting edge isn't like we have to sell you an AI product tomorrow, but we have to be familiar with it. We have to be doing what we can to get more efficient. And then I think that, the next step, or among the next steps, or what that means from an actual deliverable perspective.
Could turn into productized, branded AI agents, something that you're using that's your own IP.
Yes.
over time.
Over time.
Okay, great. So lightning round here.
All right.
So tell me, what's the biggest myth about finance you wish would go away?
I think people think of finance people as like just the no man or no woman, you know? Hey, I think it would be really good if we spend on this. No. Yeah, it's not in the budget.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like the bean counter.
The bean counter,
the fun sponge.
the fun police, the no fun officer, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And that is the persona that some of us financy types have taken.
Yeah.
But, good ones are about measuring the ROI on those things. It's not just it's like, what are we going to get?
Yeah.
Why are we doing it? And if you present a compelling case that we can see how it will benefit the business, then absolutely we should spend that. Yeah. So I think, again, there's just a stereotype for a reason.
There's enough history of that.
There's enough history of it. But yeah, it's not, finance people are not there just to say, no, if it's not in the budget, it's the only thing you can ever spend on. It's to be strategic and thoughtful about what and why.
Best purchase you've made for under $100 that's changed your life?
There's a tool that's really directed for consultants called Calendar Bridge. So everyone has, right, like a Calendly, or they have some meeting link. But when you're in our space, you often have a bunch of different client calendars that are also often some are Gmail, some are Outlook, whatever.
Oh yeah, it's awful.
So for the first year and a half, two, maybe more, maybe predating 512 even, I was always getting double booked and having to apologize and cancel and move and whatever. And this is a couple bucks a month to sync all of that. And it has just fundamentally changed my life.
Oh, okay. I'm going to write that down. Do you have an administrative assistant?
I never have.
Okay.
I never have had one. That would also probably fix it, but it would probably be more than $8 a month or whatever.
So all these little software hacks.
Calendar Bridge. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for coming on.